good night. We used to sing that song in second grade. Then we'd sit down and drink milk and cookies. So I have this overwhelming desire for milk and cookies. Can you hear me? Does this work? Yeah. All right, great. Well, welcome everyone. This is a very interesting setup for a room. Wow. So I am really thrilled to be here. It's a blessing in any time to share the love of our Lord Jesus Christ with people who love him as well. It's actually even more fun to share it with people who don't know it. So you're a pretty fun crowd, but not as fun as you could be. It's just the way that I'm cut as a person. I always love telling people about the love and the grace and the power of the Holy Spirit, the Son, Jesus Christ, and God the Father's plan for all of us. For whatever crazy reason, I don't like to take any credit for it. God made me that way. I think I'm extraordinarily well named because honest to goodness, if I didn't do it, I think the rocks would scream like St. Paul said in his scriptures. So welcome everybody. This is I hope you can hear me in the West Wing. And I would love to let me ask whoever runs this, how much time, when do you want to kick the deacon off?
Well, we want to hear as much as we can from you.
All right, so when you start leaving, I'll say maybe it'll be like, oh, okay, good. I also want you to know that my style, I think some of you have probably incurred my style or endured my style at Mass, what I wish we could do at Mass, and I'm being a little flippant here, is I wish we could talk, you know? Like when I'm with the kids at the high school, I'll just stop a homily, go talk to a kid about what they think, because there's so much grace coming out of those beautiful minds. Honestly, you can do that in a regular Mass too, but in not maybe a Sunday liturgy, because the parking lot, we gotta get out, right? But I love interaction, because I think the Spirit of God provokes. The Spirit of God cajoles. The Spirit of God is quite frankly a pain in the patooski when he is after us. And we need to respond to him. So what we're going to do today is a very interactive presentation. I'm going to tell you some things. Let me get this baby fired up here. I'm going to tell you some things, but I want for you to be so kind as to have questions and be kind enough to ask questions. Does that sound fair? So please make sure, that's good. Please make sure that you are comfortable stopping me anywhere. Tell me when that thing's up there.
Yeah.
Did it shut off?
No.
Go to sleep. Okay, I know I'm connected. Okay, there. Now it's doing things. Here's the Acts of the Apostles, 76. What do you say we study this thing? So what I want to do is basically, I want to make sure that you all feel very comfortable at any time to stop me and say, Deacon, what are we going to do today? Okay? Or I don't understand that. Or I'd like to know more about that. There's only one danger with that. I may not know what I'm talking about. So at that point, I'll say, I don't know. Let's look it up. Okay? One of the greatest things about the internet, particularly if we know where to search, is we can find most all things, right? And I am a deacon in the Catholic Church in the Diocese of Lafayette. As I was just introduced, I'm celebrated on the 13th of September, my 5th anniversary, and I am absolutely delighted to serve the Lord in the form of the Sacrament of Holy Orders. One of the things that's most shocking to people when we talk about the diaconate is they don't realize that a deacon is actually received the exact same sacrament as priests and bishops. How many people knew that? Right. So how many sacraments do we have? 7. No, we actually have 9, because then we have Holy Orders is split to Holy Orders Light, Holy Orders kind of a suggestion. Those are little, no, there's only one Holy Orders, right? What's your name? Hi, Dave. Paul, nice to meet you. So, all right. So there's one sacrament of Holy Orders, and that is what I have received, and I'm going to explain all that. So today we're talking about a couple very simple things. We're going to talk about 6 and 7, out of Acts, right? What happens in 6 and 7? One, we talk about the creation of the diaconate. The other thing is we're going to talk about what they are, what they can do, how you can hide from them, what they're called to do. Then we're going to talk about Stephen, a deacon, and the church's first martyr, and why in the world did they kill him? Okay? So that's what we're going to try to talk about in these two very simple chapters. Everybody do their homework? You know, I am from a high school. By the way, I'm retired, and I've never been so glad to be retired in my life. I'm loving it. I love Guerin Catholic. But the only thing I really miss about Guerin Catholic High School is the kids. I love them. And they used to let me do this in there. And I would just love to play. So I'm just going to look at you as a bunch of 14-year-olds, and as long as you don't mind. All right? So this is what we're going to do. Is this okay? All right. So what are deacons? First of all, deacons are identified, they're not made. You can't really convince somebody to be a deacon. You can't go out and say, oh, you know, this is a really good person. He should be a deacon. You know, oh, Joey, he's a great guy. Let's make him a deacon. Because he's such a nice person. He's such a man of great faith. Let's just make him a deacon. I mean, it's nice that the deacons that show up and are actually ordained, it's nice if they are nice people. It's nice if they are really great guys, and people would take issue with that about me, particularly the ones I fired at the school. But anyway, this is a misconception. Well, he's just a wonderful person. Let's make him a deacon. Well, deacons are called by God, just like priests are called by God. And the popes are called by God. And the bishops are called by God. This is a calling from God. It's not just an honor. What a wonderful person. He's worked really hard with teenagers in Bible study. Let's make him a deacon. It doesn't work that way. We are formed in a seminarial process, a little different than the priests. They go away for 5 years. We stay in our community because we own houses and we're generally married and we have children and jobs. So we then work in what's called a cohort seminarial process. Mine started off with 30 guys. Of that, 11 were selected. Of that, 8 started and 5 were ordained. That's a very common pace, okay? Because a lot of great guys want to check it out. A lot of great guys whose wives say, you need to be a deacon. Go and check it out. And then the wheels come off the cart and they realize, I'm not called to that. And so there's a seminarial process. Plus, the women are also very, very much a part of the seminarial process. We meet every week up in Kokomo for 3 days, and the women go right with us. And then we go to class every single week for 3 hours a night, and the women have their own classes. It's a very, very serious academic exercise. Essentially, when you're formed, you're formed to the level of a undergraduate degree in theology. Now, when I was going through, you had to actually have an undergraduate degree in theology to start the seminarial process. Now, they've changed that. Of course, story of my life, they required it so I went to ELM, which is essentially an undergraduate degree in theology, and I got that done 3 years. So my length was 8 years. But I'm a little remedial. That makes sense. Now it's 5 years, okay? And so there's a lot of learning, my goodness. The mind of the church is one of the biggest things you have to learn, particularly if you're a business person, to learn how the church thinks, because it's different, and that takes some time. And so then then you are ordained to holy orders, one of the 7 sacraments, holy orders. And I'm going to talk a lot about holy orders here in a minute. And you're given an ecclesial assignment that my wife and I have been debating and scouring many of our documents to make sure that I spelled ecclesial correctly, because it just looks wrong. But we can't find anybody to show us a better spelling. Ecclesial. Is that ecclesial? No, I don't know what that is, but it should say ecclesial. Anyway, we were arguing about that last night. I pulled out deacon books. I can't find the word ecclesial. So anyway, so this is the new spelling of ecclesial. Given a parish assignment. So the bishop gave me, when he ordained me, he gave me an ecclesial assignment. Paul, I want you to run the third option marriage program in the Deanery of Carmel, Indiana. Okay? Because I work for the bishop. I don't work for Father Richard. Father Richard is not my boss. Bishop Doherty is my boss. I am vowed to him just like Father Richard is. I'm not a subdeacon. I am a deacon, just like a priest is a priest. We'll talk about that. Okay? These are my two wives. They really are. The one on the right's a little cuter. Denise is my wife. I'm vowed to her in marriage, matrimony. Been married 39 years. Bishop Doherty, I am married to him in a vow of obedience and to his successor. God forbid, I ain't even talking about this, if I were to lose Denise, I do not go get a new Denise. I am a cleric and I am vowed to celibacy at that point. Praise God. I hope you don't take offense to this. Praise God, I am not vowed to celibacy while she's alive. So anyway, but as a deacon, because I am vowed to that marriage, celibacy, I am vowed to chastity in my marriage, but not celibacy. If I were to lose Denise or any deacon were to lose their wife, then they become celibate. And I'm telling you, they take this so serious, just about scare you to death. The week before you get ordained, you go to the cathedral and they bring out a paper. In the case of the death of your spouse, I, Paul Lunsford, understand that from that point forward, I will be declared celibate. I will not be in the company of women alone. I will not allow frequency with women or individual women in my home. Signed, Paul Lunsford. On the altar at the cathedral. I think they're serious. Right? So, pray for my wife's lifespan, will you please? I do. And she lost a kidney about 3 years ago. She's doing great now. But, girl, you got to hang in there. All right? So, these are my two vowed to persons. Here's another thing that's really interesting. People say all the time, well, your marriage is the primary vocation. Right? Does that make sense? Marriage is your primary vocation. No. Now, this is why this is so important to get the wives involved and make sure that they're okay with this whole process of the diaconate. Marriage is not my primary vocation. It used to be. Marriage and the permanent diaconate are my vocations, and they are co-equal. My job, and one of the things that they're watching in that cohort formation process, can he balance himself? Can he make decisions? Can he tell this wife yes and this wife no? Let's watch him do that. And that's what they're observing in that 5 years. And if they believe that that charism and that judgment and that balance is in that man's heart, then they go ahead and they move forward with ordination. If they don't, this wonderful person, this holy person, this great guy, this man who is clearly a servant is rejected. Because balance must be achieved. If they can't do it, then we're not going to ordain it. Make sense? Because the last thing they want is a whole bunch of divorced deacons. Can't happen. Can happen. Can happen. Shh. Goodness, it doesn't need to happen. We need to avoid that. That's the church. They're very serious about it, as they should be. So where are these deacons in the hierarchy of the church? Right? You got Bishop Doherty. I'm cutting you guys off, aren't I? You got Bishop Doherty, the great Father Richard, pastor, and that guy over there. Right? How many deacons are on the screen?
3.
3 deacons. This guy, I don't mean to be too cavalier, is an extraordinarily good friend of When he got his job as to be bishop, I got my job at Guerin Catholic the week after. We met at Guerin Catholic. He just showed up in his golf shirt and a pair of blue jeans, checking out his high school before he had actually been ordained a bishop or elevated. And I knew enough who he was, and we started talking. We walked all over the school. We really got a great bond, a great bond. Don't do this. Don't do this. I call him deacon when I see him. He loves it. Deacon means diakonia, means servant. It actually means slave. A slave who chooses to be a slave, not one who's taken away in chains. One who chooses because he loves the master so much that he gives his life to the master. Because he loves and admires the master so much he wants to do whatever the master wants. And he wants to dedicate his life to the master's success. A deacon. And this apostle is a deacon, if you know him. He loves to serve his people. Pray for this guy. Do you know what his job is? Do you know what he was promoted to 6 months ago? You sitting down? Yes, you're all sitting down. 6 months ago, he got the job for the protection of children nationally for the USCCB. Then the scandal spanked. Bishop who? He's gone. He is everywhere but here. Pray for Father Ted Dzinski, our vicar. He is now basically acting bishop because this apostle is everywhere trying to handle this thing. Pray for him. Send him a card. He is a servant. Please call him bishop. Don't write deacon because he'll know who did that and I'll get in trouble. Here's another deacon. This is it. How many people know this man well? Yeah, the rest of you need to start inviting him over for dinner. You need to fatten him up anyway. He is clearly a servant. Sometimes sometimes Father Richard has a tendency to, me come off as, a little bit busy or not really connecting. Well, you have 14,000 parishioners, you wouldn't do it either. But I tell you, the second you have an issue, he turns into the most pastoral man you've ever met in your life. He is a deacon. He is after the service of his flock. He is also, so here we go, and this will be repeated later. I am a deacon. I'm a servant. I am a chosen slave. He is a deacon. He is a deacon. I am the icon of Jesus Christ servant. That's what the diaconate is. A deacon is the icon of Jesus Christ servant. Was Jesus Christ a servant? How did Jesus Christ show his servanthood when he was walking around in ministry those 3 years? Anybody have an idea? Can you point to a kind of a famous thing that showed his servitude? Yeah. The washing of the feet. Anybody here been to the Holy Land? Anybody been around camels? Or horses? They kind of pee and poop a lot, don't they? Can you imagine the road system in Jerusalem in the time of Christ? Where did the human sewage go? Right down the trenches of the street. And when it would rain, it would flood the streets, and the human sewage would come over. Then it would dry out, and it would be dried. And then the camel poop and the urine, and the human poop and the urine. Everybody's walking in it. If you ever really want to understand the power of someone talking about, why did you not give me something to wash my feet? Your feet were rank and rank with disease. Now, they didn't understand it, but they knew people got sick by touching the feet. Remember the woman who came and perfumed his feet and washed her feet with her tears? Good God, the woman's going to be sicker than a dog. She put her very life at risk because she loved the master. Got it? Jesus says, these guys think they're all about ready to become part of the new hierarchy, the returning of David. The temple will be rebuilt. These apostles are excited in this scene of the washing of the feet. They're jacked up. We're going to be somebody. Remember, we just had last Sunday. What were they talking about? Who's the greatest? Man, I'm going to be Senator Paul. I'm going to have a big place, right? I'm hanging with the Messiah. I'm politically going to be the man. No, I'm going to be the man. That was the conversation. And Jesus shows them the real path of being a follower of Jesus Christ by washing their feet. And what was Paul's reaction? And so well named. I would have, you're not doing that. You're my Lord. I'm not letting you touch those stanky things. Well, if you don't let me do that, you'll not have my inheritance. Well, then wash all of me. Servant. Servanthood. The icon of Jesus Christ, servant. The icon of Jesus Christ, high priest. Also Jesus Christ, servant. But now, icon Jesus Christ, high priest. Why? Because he can do the altar of sacrifice, right? Icon of Jesus Christ, high priest. And then the bishop, the apostle. Do we all understand? This is actually an apostle. The apostle, Jesus Christ, shepherd. Make sense? Okay. And we're going to blow through some of this stuff because I went off script. How many people are familiar with this Divine Mercy? Have you all got this? Now, this has nothing to do with St. Faustina, but I love the picture and I'm stealing it, okay? You see the grace and the mercy coming from the side of Christ, from the heart of Christ, right? Everything in the hierarchical process of our church flows from the bishop. Everything from the apostle. All charisms of Christ are his. He holds them all. Does that make sense? And so he is Jesus Christ the shepherd, he is Jesus Christ the high priest, and he is Jesus Christ the servant. Bishop Doherty is all three of those things. Okay? The ranks of holy orders are the episcopacy, we looked that one up, that is correct. The presbyterate, that is also correct. That's what those priests call themselves, they're presbyterators. All right? They're priests, they're high priests, right? And then the slaves. Okay? That's the hierarchy. All of them, the exact same sacrament. What's the difference between Father Richard and Deacon Paul Lunsford? The number of charisms given to this soul. The day he came up, can I touch you? The day he came up and laid hands on me, oh, it's so nice to touch hair. I wish I had hair. And he laid hands on my head. I was given the sacrament of holy orders. Not sacrament, holy orders light, or wannabe, or kinda. The sacrament of holy orders. My soul was permanently marked and changed, as it is to a priest. When is a priest ordained? You ask a priest when they're ordained, they'll almost always give you the ordination of their priesthood. Not when they were ordained a deacon was when they were ordained. When they were ordained a deacon, they gave a vow of celibacy. When they were ordained a deacon, they gave a vow of obedience. When they were ordained a deacon, they were given diaconal charisms of the apostle. When they were ordained a high priest, once again, the laying on of hands, this is beautiful. And then the extension of more charisms come to him. Okay? Little known fact. Did you know that a bishop can remove faculties and grant faculties? He can take a priest and say, I don't want you to preach anymore. That's historical. We've seen that with some saints. He can say, I don't want you to offer the Mass anymore. Maybe it's a disciplinary action. Maybe he's not very good at doing the Mass. Maybe he's mad. Who knows? Bishops have these authorities. Charisms are extended. They're not earned. Charisms are a lot like our faith. Do you earn your faith? Can you earn your faith? No, it's gift, right? It's a gift from God the Father. Charisms of the apostles to the people below him are gifts. They're not mine. By the grace of the bishop do I operate in those charisms. Does that make sense? So does Father Richard. We all know these 7 sacraments, right? This is what a bishop can do. He can baptize. He can confirm. He can consecrate. He can absolve. He can marry. He can do the anointing of the sick. He can preside over funerals. He can preach and he can teach. Right? That's everything a bishop can do. All the fullness of a bishop. What about a priest? Which one's missing? Who can tell me, before I get done, which one's missing? Confirmation. Right. One of the things you did, somebody said, who said ordained? You were right. I should have had on the other slide, ordained. A bishop can ordain. Priest can't ordain. Good call. I'm going to change it for the next class. Okay? But the only thing that's missing here is right here. Confirmation. Now, you've all seen Father Richard confirm, right? How does that happen? Bishop Higgy blows his knee out, falls down a pair of stairs, can't stand up, God love him, and he does a extraordinary, how many people are extraordinary ministers of the Holy Communion? Do you realize you are extraordinary, right? There's a document with your name on it up in Lafayette, that's, what's your name? It says Edith on it. The bishop has authorized you to do this on a temporary basis. You go to New Mexico, can you be an extraordinary? No. Right?
So what about at the Easter Vigil, when Father Richard does confirmations?
It's extraordinary. What happens is, the office prepares everybody who's gone through our CIA and have, the whole witnesses, and they know that it's valid. Those get submitted by every parish up to the diocese. Every one of those pastors receive, and we ought to ask Father Richard to show us one. They receive a letter from the bishop with an ecclesial seal, however you spell it. Ecclesial seal. Maybe I should ask him for that letter. We'll know how to spell it. And then it says, Dear Reverend Richard Dorr, pastor, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, not associate pastor, not deacon, pastor, pastor basically gives him canonical powers of the bishop, right? And so then you may baptize and confirm these people by name on this date between this hour and that hour. It's that tight. And if you have a situation where extraordinarily, once again, Father Richard decides to either baptize somebody who's not been through RCIA or to confirm them, which he, as pastoral, has the ability to request from the chancellery, from the bishop himself, it'll get a document. It'll say, you can baptize and confirm Paul at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, and that's it. These are extraordinary charism extension, and then pull back. Make sense? So, that's the difference. And then on the deacons, hey there, that's actually a picture. If you're going to have a bald head, it's good to have a good one, right? And he was so funny, he said to me beforehand, he goes, now Paul, you're the only bald guy I'm going to ordain today. Are you okay if I actually touch your head? Or, normally I touch the guy's hair. I put my hand right on your head, and I said, well, as long as you've got like a towel or something, you go ahead and do that. So, because I was a little nervous. Wow, what a gorgeous picture, at least for me. All right? And so they extend their charism. And I can do all these things. This is what a deacon can do. I can baptize, witness, officiate, preach, and teach. Make sense? Can I anoint the sick? I can anoint at baptism. Do it twice. Why can I not anoint the sick? Because I can't hear their confession. Can I anoint the sick of an unconscious person?
Yes.
What happens when they wake up? Ah! Go back to sleep. Gonna make me a heretic. No, if they're muted or they're incapable, I can anoint. But it is not the same sacrament. The sacrament is what the priest does. Does that make sense? This keeps a man very busy. Very busy. And it's a blessing to be able to do all these things. Okay. Let's get this thing to turn. Come on. Okay. So what?
I have a question.
You can ask it.
What does it mean to witness the way?
Well, theologically, are you familiar with theology of the body at all? John Paul? He's a brilliant man. We're going to figure out how brilliant he was in about 100 years. Are you an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion? Want to be? We'll sign you up. Or send it up to the office. When you give the Eucharist to someone, you're touching them, you're giving them the Eucharist. When you're absolving in confession, they're actually supposed to touch you in confession. When you're or confirmed, you're anointed, right? And when you're baptized, water's poured over you and you're anointed. When you have the anointing of the sick, you're anointed. Got it? Holy orders, whack. Intercourse is the sacrament. Yeah, well, we don't want to be there, right? So that's why we witness their vows. The sacramental act of matrimony is consummation. This is one of my favorite topics. First, I love to talk to teenagers about sex. You know, you're sitting there at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, you're sitting there going, I walk in and say, today we're talking about sex. Man, you got them right there, right? Yeah. It really helps them understand the church is not down on sex. We love sex. Sex is great. It's just that you need to be ordered to be able to participate in sexual intercourse and the consummation. Because intercourse is a sacramental act. Now, how many people know Noel? Is he a pretty holy dude? What would you think? He's holy. I think he's a holy man. I don't mean to be robbing you of your gifts from heaven, but I think he's a holy man. If he pushed Father Richard out of the way, I'd like to see that happen. Put on his vestments, I'd like to see that. That'd be funny. And walked up there and started saying Mass. How many of you would be outraged? All of us. Why? He's a holy man. He's a great guy. He's not ordered. He's not prepared. He's not consecrated. He's not ordained, ordered to the sacrament. He's a poser. He's not a priest. When we participate in sexual intercourse outside of the ordering and the ordaining of marriage, we're posers. It would be no different than Noel going up to try to consecrate the Eucharist. It's offensive. You tell that to teenagers and they go, I got it. Yes, I got that. That makes sense. So, we witness the vows. We have prepared them. We witness their verbal consent in a community because we're a communal church. And that way that we're all there to support them as well. And their vows are public and binding before God and his icon of Jesus Christ, servant, or Jesus Christ, high priest, because I can marry as well. And then the party starts. And when they go home, or hotel, there's the sacrament. Make sense? That's the beauty of the sacrament. So I often say to my wife, hey baby, wanna go home and get sacramental? You know? I'm just saying, did he really just say that? But it is a sacrament. It's holy. Holy, 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 holy. You should never lose sight of that. Make sense? Okay. Yep. Are you going to take issue with this holiness thing I laid on you?
No, that's too much for me.
All right.
I understand that a layperson can baptize in case of emergency.
Yes. A layperson can baptize in a case of emergency. I baptized my mother-in-law 10 years ago when she was near death, and I wasn't a deacon yet. A deacon doesn't need an emergency, but a layperson acts with grace and courage when he or she does so. Always in this manner. If you get water, spit, whatever you come up with, water's great. I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. If you don't do anything else right, you scored. That's a triunal baptism, okay? I got 10 minutes. Okay, let's go really fast. Okay, so then you... Oh my goodness. Let's just stop here. Anything you want to know about the diaconate, let's ask questions. Yep, way in the back. What's your name? I can't even see you, Mary. You're wearing purple, that's all I know.
When you witness the wedding, is it a mass?
It can be.
Oh, mass?
Yep, obviously I can't consecrate the Eucharist, but here's what happens. I married my son and his wife, well, I guess his fiancée, And what happens is the Mass goes on like normal. I stand up, I proclaim the gospel as the deacon, and then from that point forward, I go over and I witness their vows, and I do all the prayers and everything. And then I step back, they go over, kneel down, Father says Mass. Okay, and then I come out and I give the nuptial blessing. And then may I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Lunsford. So that's in a Mass, and I also can do it outside of Mass, as any priest can, but a deacon can, identical. Only thing is, if two Catholics getting married who want the Mass in their wedding, gotta have a priest, because I'm just a slave, not a high priest. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Hi there, Rob.
Hello, Rob.
Are there differences between the permanent and the transitional diaconate, other than the fact that transitional is looking forward?
No, you just did the perfect explanation. There's one diaconate. There's one, everybody's a deacon. If there was a difference, then when Father DiCarlo became a priest, he would no longer be a deacon. It's identical. The diaconate is a singular act of holy orders. It's a rank of holy orders. One is transitional, only meaning suggesting that they're going to add additional charisms. Transitional is actually the wrong word. And if you look at a lot of the commentaries in the church's documents, they question the use of the word transitional. It should be something that suggests he will be augmented later, right? You could also say that about Father Richard. I mean, Father Richard's got deacon, he's got a bishop charism. I mean, if he gets elevated to the episcopacy someday, I mean, it's just like, is that a transition? No, it's just an augmentation. He's elevated to the next level. So yes, ma'am. What's your name?
Jeannie.
Oh, Jeannie.
Hi, how would you compare the diaconate of that early church, the 7 first deacons, to what we have today?
What a great question. Deacons' primary job is to hold koinonia into the community. The idea of Christian fellowship. Our job is to hold Christian fellowship. When Stephen's cohort of 7 was put through, they were all the apostles were Jerusalem Jews, right? Jews from Jerusalem. All of the deacons were Hellenist Jews, Greek Jews. And remember this whole thing where they sold houses and bought stuff and gave to each other, this acting in common, which, sounds like grand communism or socialism or whatever, and we're all sort of cringe and kind of cool, but, wow, we know what happens there. Well, by the time of Stephen, it was already falling apart. The wheels were coming off that cart. And the apostles were saying, we don't want to get involved in the politics of this. We don't want to get involved in the administration. Quite frankly, these Hellenist followers of Jesus Christ are a little weird. Anybody been to Mass in Peru, the country, not Indiana? The people in Peru, Indiana are kind of normal. You go to Peru, the Mass is mostly the same, but it's very culturally different. You go to Belize, Mexico City, it's a little different. It's very culturally different. It's beautiful. It's culturally different. These were Hellenists. These people were all from Greece. What was Greece compared to Jerusalem? Educationally, like Harvard versus a sandbox, correct?
Yes.
Culturally, the Hellenists, they had this view of the world. These Jerusalem, which is a backwater, jerkwater town, they were just Jews, very Hebrew, right? These were Greek followers of Christ. And so that's where these 7 deacons were ordained. They wanted to send them out because they understood that they needed to be closer to the people. So your question was, how are we the same? The reason, my job is, I will never become a priest if, God forbid, we keep bringing this up, Denise were to pass away. It could happen that I would go to seminary and become a high priest. But I am called to Jesus Christ, the servant icon. I would only do that if the bishop called me and said, I want you to go to seminary, and then I would have the right to say yes or no. I am a permanent deacon. Keyword permanent, okay? And I'm meant to get close to the people. You see a collar around my throat? Now we can wear them. I can wear clerics, I can wear a cassock, But, you cruise into Patachou or over to Bub's Cafe or slide into some bar in the Cassock, how are they going to treat me? I cruise in with a Notre Dame t-shirt on and a pair of cutoffs, how are they going to treat me? That's a deacon, right? Maybe they don't like Notre Dame, it's one other deal. So they understand the community differences. Clearly that's what Stephen was doing. Clearly that's what I'm supposed to do. Do you know that a deacon can be a politician? There are judges and politicians that are deacons in the Roman Catholic, not a priest. Not a priest. I am supposed to be in and amongst you. Why? So that I can hold up the hierarchy of doctrine. Basically, when Stephen was going down, when this whole act, this is now we're in chapter 6, when this whole act to get these 7 men got going, there were disagreements between the Hellenists and the Jerusalem Jews. And they saw this pluralism, this koinonia, as more important than the differences. The belief in Jesus Christ was worth defending. So they wanted to go out and get men who could relate to those people from Greece. Does that make sense? In our country, we need people who can relate to people who are from Central America. Do we not? The church is exploding with Central Americans. The church was exploding from people in other areas than Jerusalem. See the role? Deacons are very important in that regard. Why do we need deacons? Church is growing quickly then. It's growing quickly today. There were factions then. You have the Orthodox and the less than Orthodox. Deacons are the bridge. I love zeros, nuns. I love nuns. I'm not talking about ladies in habits. I'm talking about the new term, nuns, which means I have no faith. Bring them. I love them. Okay? You think I'm going to have any effect on them? I got a big old white collar around my neck? No. Give me a Michelob and a time with a nun, and we'll see what I can get done, right? Holding assets in common was breaking down. This is differences in causing issues, administrative issues, and evangelization. Stephen was an evangelist. He was a Hellenist leader. He was able to reach the local people. He focused on Jesus rather than the trappings of the temple, and this jerked the Jews were so mad at that. He was into the love of Jesus Christ. The fact that God the Father would actually send his son to be the perfect sacrifice. That's what he was like, wow. Not, let's go to the temple, because the temple's what's the happening place. Right? And that really made them mad. He preached that God could be found everywhere. This frosted them. And he was able to bring large people of diverse populations to the understanding of who Jesus Christ is. And so his discourse, what was his message? Why did they arrest him? And what are the similarities? We'll go real fast here. He showed the hierarchical Jews, when he gave his discourse, which now we're in chapter 7, that they had truly, truly messed up. And he proved it. He showed them in the chapter 7 through 23, he makes it very clear. He never accepted any of his prophets. I mean, you tried to kill Joseph. You rejected Moses. Good night, that's Moses. You guys wanted to kill him. And then you rejected the Messiah when he showed up. This made them very mad. And then the excessive reverence to the temple put them over the top. Would a Jerusalem deacon, Hebrew deacon, have seen that difference? No. He was a Jew. He's from Jerusalem. He understands the reverence of the temple. He would have never seen that as over the top. Would a Greek convert see it? Yes. And the Jerusalem Hebrew Jews, the Sanhedrin, lost their mind when he said that. It's too much. When Jesus, we just went through the Eucharistic discourse, right? I am the bread of life. What happened when Jesus said, I am the bread of life and my real blood and my real body, and you're going to eat it? What'd they say? You're out of your mind. That's too much, right? This is crazy. It's too hard for us to accept. Look at the similarity between that and Stephen. Stephen's discourse, he says, you guys think that the temple is the God. Yahweh's the God. Jesus Christ is God, not the building. And that was too much. These are the similarities between the two, of Jesus' death and Stephen's death. Stephen called out the leadership just like Jesus did. He called them hypocrites, didn't he? So did Jesus. He called them stiff-necked people. That's Christ's very line. That's actually the scripture from 751. and 53. He reminded them of their history of rejection, so did Jesus. Joseph, Moses, and Jesus. Falsely accused by bystanders. Stephen was falsely accused. They made up crazy accusations, like seems to be happening all the time. But anyway, made up crazy accusations up against him, just like they did to Jesus Christ. Bingo. Similarity. Accused them of worshiping the temple rather than God. So did Jesus. Called out God to forgive his executioners when they were killing him, just like Christ did. Jesus, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Our Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Same thing. Same line. And then he said this, behold, I see the heavens open and the Son of Man standing at God, the right hand of God. When they heard that phrase, they lost it. This man must die. No matter how righteous he is, no matter how on spot he is, this revelation that Jesus Christ actually was the Messiah and we killed him and he is sitting at the right hand of the Father is blasphemy. It's blasphemy because if he's right, we are all wrong. Let's kill him. Like that'll do it. And they did. And guess who gets started now? Saul. They go out. Here's Saul. He's a very powerful leader in the neighborhood. And they lay their cloaks at his feet, which is sort of a way to gain his authority to do so. And they stone and murder St. Stephen, Deacon Stephen, the first martyr of our church. And what happens from that? It starts Paul's persecution of the church. Before this time, the church really wasn't persecuted that much. This is the beginning of the persecution. And guess who the man is who gets it going? My namesake. And then, which is what I like to maybe hopefully one day be a part of, the conversion of his soul changes the world. It's St. Paul. We all know. Questions? We made it. Is that good? Questions?
I have a question about charisms.
Yes.
What that means, aside from like a charismatic mass.
A charism. The apostle, the bishop, holds all of the charisms of Jesus Christ. All of the attributes of Jesus Christ is in the apostle, we believe. The ability, and those charisms have names. Baptism, confirmation, the ability to preach, the ability to teach, the authority to guide and to shepherd. Those are charisms. So you have the charisms of the sacraments, the 7 sacraments. And how many holy orders are there? 1. We went over this. Bad girl. Your homework. No. 1. So the charisms are all the 7 sacraments. The ability to teach, to shepherd, to preach, and to ordain. Make sense?
Can you be given those charisms too as a deacon?
Well, yes. Now it's extraordinary. We have many of our popes were deacons. Well, actually, every pope was a deacon, but many of them skipped the priesthood. Like the greats. I was a little upset with John Paul being called the great, even though he's my best, because up until he became great, all the greats were deacons who got grabbed and made popes. And John Paul blew the whole thing up. But anyway, because he was obviously a priest for a long time and a bishop and all that. But they took, who can think of a great? Gregory was a deacon, and they made him a pope. He was not, so he had to ordain him as a priest, they had to ordain him as a bishop, and elevate him to the papacy. It was a very busy morning, right? So that does happen. Can it happen to me? Not in our, you need to pray dearly that never happened, okay? You never want to limit the apostles. It would be extraordinarily extraordinary in today's world to do anything with a deacon. The exception is the deacon loses his wife. The bishop feels he is called and asks him to consider the presbyterate and become a priest. That can happen and does happen. Now I'm probably too old, at 63, why invest all that in me, because I'm dead in about 15 years anyway. I mean, why, that's not good economics. But if I was a 35-year-old deacon and lost my wife, and the bishop really saw that I was called, and I didn't have children, or I was a 50-year-old deacon and my children were all grown, and I was really called, and the bishop was calling, not me calling him calling me, different story. Make sense? I'm permanent. The permanent diaconate is a real vocation all by its lonesome. I didn't do it to try to kind of snuggle close to Father Richard. He's too big. It makes me look small, right? I am a permanent deacon, and I want to die a permanent deacon, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do I look like I didn't answer it though?
Well, okay, with the shortage of all the priests and everything,
Yeah.
since he can, give people these special,
Yeah.
why don't they just take a bunch of deacons and stick them in these churches until
Yeah.
the priests?
Yeah, they can. They can definitely do that. Church, when we saw, remember all the administrative duties of the first 7? They do that a lot. In fact, I would tell you that the future of our church looks like this. But Our Lady of Mount Carmel in 75 years will have a deacon as, not its pastor, as its administrator. And that person will have a business background of some sort. He will have been ordained, and he will run the parish. And the priest, I don't think many priests went to seminary because they wanted to run a corporation. Most of them were in love with Jesus Christ and loved telling people about Jesus Christ. And that's what they really like to do. Quite frankly, if you ask Father Richard, that's what he dearly loved to do. Well, I think you're going to see in time the diaconate provide that. The diaconate, there are around 78,000 deacons in the United States. And we see the documents talk about a 5-to-1 eventually. So if we have 100,000 priests in the United States, we'd have 500,000 deacons. But I can't consecrate the Eucharist. But I can do a lot of pastoral things, and I can do a lot of things to help a parish and a flock come closer to Jesus Christ and allow him to live his high priest in a more powerful manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, it could happen. They're going to put their pens down. I didn't say this. I'm going to deny this. It can happen. And back in the very early days of the church, turn that camera off. No. In the very early days of the church, when they did Stephen and all the deacons, there were no priests. Did you know that? There were Jewish priests. In fact, it even says in there. And the priests even started to convert. I thought that was a great line. Anyway, they're talking about Jewish priests. There's no priesthood. The priesthood is in the bishop. It's in the apostle. The apostle is everything. All is carried. He's the priest. Well, the place is exploding. I can't be everywhere. Create the deacon. Then the next step was, hey, Jesus said he's coming back, but I don't know, we must have misunderstood. I'm dying. We better get some priests out here. And then the presbyterate was separated. And that's when you had all 3 of them. Does that make sense? So actually it was apostles, deacons, and then apostles, priests, and deacons. They put the priest in a little bit later. Not too far away from here. Does that make sense? Am I done? Yay, he's done! So you guys go do whatever you do now.